The bioluminescent markings along her arms and neck flickered in dim, erratic patterns that she could not control no matter how hard she tried. Every Velthary was born with these markings that glowed in steady, beautiful colors based on their emotions. But Kessa's markings had never worked properly. In her culture, that made her something worse than unwanted. It made her defective. She carried her meal tray toward the long rows of tables where hundreds of different alien species sat together, eating and talking. The station was home to visitors from across the galaxy, and normally that diversity meant everyone could find a place to belong, but not. Gasesh approached a table where 3 Krins sat with their massive frames, taking up most of the space. "Excuse me," she said quietly, "could I sit here?" The nearest Krin looked at her markings, saw the dim flickering patterns, and his face twisted with disgust. "Find another table," he growled, turning his back to her. Kessa moved on, feeling her markings flash pale yellow with shame. She tried a table of Solarians next there. Crystalline bodies refracted light in beautiful patterns, and they prided themselves on perfection. Before Kessa could even speak, one of them held up a translucent hand. "We do not associate with the flawed one," she said, her voice like wind. Chimiskas's markings pulsed orange with embarrassment. She moved through the dining hall, trying 6 more tables and receiving 6 more rejections. Some species told her no outright, while others simply moved their belongings to block empty seats. One group of Velthary from her own species saw her coming and actually got up and left their table entirely rather than risk sitting near her. Kessa stood in the middle of the crowded hall, holding her tray and feeling completely alone. Her markings were cycling rapidly now through muddy browns and dark purples, broadcasting her distress to everyone who cared to look. She was about to give up and return to her quarters to eat alone again, when someone spoke. That seat to Kessa looked up in surprise. Human stood beside an empty table, gesturing to the chair across from him. It was unremarkable by galactic standards, with brown hair and brown eyes, wearing a maintenance jumpsuit that had seen better days. His name tag read Marcus Chen, Engineering Sus. Hesitated, unsure if this was some kind of joke. The human sat down and started unpacking his lunch, seemingly unbothered by her silence. She finally found her voice. "It is not taken." "But are you sure?" The human looked up at her with a confused expression. "Sure about what?" "About sitting with me," she said, gesturing to her flickering markings. Shrugged. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be? Because everyone else refuses," she said, the words coming out more bitter than she intended. He took a bite of his sandwich and made a face. "Know what everyone refuses," he said. "This coffee tastes like engine coolant. But I drink it anyway because the alternative is falling asleep during my shift sometimes. Everyone else is wrong about what matters." Kessa slowly sat down, still waiting for him to realize his mistake and leave. Marcus continued eating and started talking about his day like this was the most normal thing in the world. He complained about the station's air recycling system, and how someone kept stealing his good wrench, and how the gravity fluctuations in Section 7 were giving everyone headache. Cheska found herself listening and then responding. She mentioned that she could feel electromagnetic fluctuations before they happened, and maybe that was why Section 7 felt wrong. Marcus sat up straighter. "Really? That's actually useful. Do you think you could help me track down what's causing it?" Before Kessa could answer, another human voice called out, "Hey Marcus, you found the problem child." Kessa's markings flashed dark with shame, but Marcus just laughed. "Sarah, shut up and come meet someone useful." Woman in a pilot's jacket walked over with her own food tray. She had short black hair and a friendly smile. "Sarah, Chen, Marcus's sister, and significantly better-looking twin," she said, sitting down. "This lady consents fields before they fluctuate," Marcus said, "which means she might be able to help us find that power drain." "No way," Sarah said, looking at Kessa with genuine interest. "What species are you?" "Velthary," Kessa said, quietly. "Cool," Sarah said, taking a bite of something that looked unidentifiable. "So what's your name?" "Kessa, nice to meet you." Kessa stared at both humans, completely confused. They were not reacting to her markings at all. They were not treating her like she was broken or defective. They weren't just talking to her like she was a normal person. "Why? Are you being kind to me?" she finally asked. Marcus and Sarah exchanged a look. "Why wouldn't we be?" Marcus asked. "Because I am flawed," Kessa said, gesturing to her unstable markings. "Everyone can see it. My genetics are defective. I should have been recycled when I was young, but I escaped and now no one wants to be Near Mizera's expression darkened. Wait, your people wanted to kill you because your lights work different. Lisa noted. Marcus put down his sandwich. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, he said flatly. Your markings are just colors they don't make you less of a person, but they show that I am unstable, Kessa argued. They prove I am inferior. Marcus. Lean forward. Lean forward. Listen, where I come from, humans spent thousands of years being terrible to each other over differences, way smaller than glowing skin. We fought wars over skin color and who people loved and which invisible being they prayed to. Nearly destroyed ourselves because we couldn't accept that different doesn't mean. Badkiss's markings flickered pale blue with something she had not felt in years. Hope so. You do not care that I am defective. She is skeedy or not defective. Sarah said firmly. Are different, and different is just different. Marcus nodded. Besides, he said, if your people think stable, boring lights are better than ones that actually show what you're feeling, then they're missing the point. Yours are way more interesting. Because I felt her markings shift to amber with confusion and wonder. Shy had spent her entire life being told she was worthless. These humans had known her for 10 minutes and were treating her like she mattered. Over the next hour, more humans stopped by the table. Old Chen, a retired explorer with gray hair and kind eyes, told her that her markings reminded him of aurora lights on a colony world. Jake, a young technician, showed her pictures of Earth and explained that humans came in hundreds of different colors and sizes, and that was considered beautiful. Each human who joined them treated Kessa like she was supposed to be there, like sitting with her was the most natural thing in the world. When the meal ended, Marcus asked if she wanted to meet tomorrow, same time, same place. Kessa agreed, even though part of her expected this to be temporary. As she walked back to her quarters that night, her markings glowed with steady, soft gold for the first time in months. Across the dining hall, a group of Velthri had watched the entire interaction with expressions ranging from confusion to disgust. One of them, a male named Vreen, shook his head. Humans are too primitive to understand what they are doing, he said. They will learn. But Kessa did not care what Vreen thought anymore. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen to sit beside her, and that simple act had changed something fundamental. Inside her, she started to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was not as broken as everyone had told her she was. Maybe the problem was not with her. Maybe the problem was with everyone else. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus first sat with Kessa, and in that time everything had changed. Every day at lunch, Kessa found Marcus waiting at their table, and every day more humans joined them. It became a routine that Kessa started to depend on. Sarah would arrive with wild stories about her cargo runs through asteroid fields. Jake would show up with pictures of weird alien foods he tried to cook and failed spectacularly. Old Chen would settle into his chair and share tales from 70 different worlds he had explored, and Marcus would sit there, eating his terrible coffee and complaining about maintenance problems while treating Kessa like she was exactly where she belonged. The other humans never made a big deal about her markings. When they flickered with nervousness, no one pointed it out. When they glowed with happiness at a joke someone made, the humans just smiled and kept talking. So found herself speaking more, laughing more. Her markings stayed stable for longer and longer periods, showing clear colors instead of muddy confusion. Afternoon, Marcus brought a problem to lunch. We have got this power drain in Section 12, he said, looking frustrated. Every diagnostic shows the systems are fine, but something is pulling energy and we cannot find it. Kessa thought about it. I could walk through the section, she offered. If there is an electromagnetic problem, I might be able to sense it. Marcus looked relieved. Would you? That would save us days of tearing apart wall panels. The next day, Kessa accompanied Marcus and his engineering team through Section 12. She walked slowly, letting her natural sensitivity extend outward. The other engineers watched with curiosity rather than disgust. There, Kessa said, pointing to a wall panel. Something is wrong behind there. The flow feels interrupted, like water hitting a rock. Marcus opened the panel and found a damaged relay that was bleeding energy into the station's structural supports. The diagnostics had missed it completely because the drain was so dispersed. You just saved us about 40,000 credits in wasted equipment replacement, Marcus said, grinning. Kessa's markings glowed bright gold with pride. From that day forward, the human engineering team started asking for her help regularly. She became known as the person who could sense problems before they became disasters. Other aliens on the station started noticing a Kryn named Torvik. Approached her one day in the corridor. He had small vestigial wings on his back that marked him as unfinished by his species standards. Saw you eating with the humans, he said. Quietly do. They really not care about defects. Kessa looked at his wings. They do not see defects, she said. They just see people. Could I? Torvik hesitated. Could I sit with you tomorrow? Yes, Kessa said, and felt something warm spread through her chest the next day. Torvik joined their table, then came Lisa's a Meridian, whose telepathic abilities were too weak for her. Psionically focused society, then came others outcasts, and rejects from a dozen different species all drawn to the human table. Where differences were treated as normal, the humans welcomed each one without question. Sarah taught Lisa some basic self-defense moves since she could not rely on telepathic warnings. Jake tried to cook Kryn food for Torvik and failed so badly that everyone laughed until their sides hurt. Chen told stories that made everyone feel less alone, and Marcus just kept showing up every day, proving through his simple, consistent presence that they all mattered then. The Velthari delegation Araveticasa saw them entering the station through the main docking bay. 5 of her former clutchmates, dressed in the formal robes that showed their perfectly stable markings. Leading them was Vryn, the same male who had dismissed the humans weeks ago. Kessa felt her markings flicker with old fear. That evening, she was eating with her usual group when Vryn and 2 other Velthari approached the table. The dining hall grew quiet as other species watched. Kisavrian said, his voice dripping with false concern. Heard you were here. We came to bring you home. Kisa's markings flashed orange and brown with distressed sigh. Do not want to go home, she said. Quietly, Vryn looked at the humans sitting around her with disgust. You have contaminated yourself by associating with these primitives, he said. Look at you sitting with defectives and emotional creatures who cannot control themselves. These humans are too simple to understand what you are. They tolerate you out of ignorance, not acceptance. Marcus carefully put down his forcus's markings were cycling rapidly through dark colors. Sarah's hand moved to rest supportively near Kessa's arm. Watched Vryn with the patient expression of someone who had seen this kind of cruelty before. Marcus spoke. Calmly explain something to me, he said. What exactly makes Kessa inferior? Vryn gestured at her markings. Her genetic instability is obvious. Her markings prove she is defective and suitable for breeding a burden to society. Marcus pulled out his datapad and started scrolling thought. It's interesting, he said, because on Earth about 8% of humans have what you might call genetic mutations, different colored eyes extra, or missing fingers, neurological differences that change how they think. Some of the greatest human artists, scientists, and leaders came from that 8%. Vryn scoffed. Her species is primitive. You lack the sophistication to recognize genetic inferiority. Marcus showed him the datapad. This woman, he said, pointing to a picture sheet, had severe dyslexia, which meant her brain processed written language differently. She became one of our greatest engineers because she could visualize spatial relationships in ways others could not. This man, he scrolled to another picture. He was born DFIE, revolutionized sign language, linguistics, and helped create technology that let thousands of people communicate. Sarah leaned forward. We learned something a long time ago, she said. The people everyone calls broken are usually just seeing the world from an angle nobody else considered. Marcus looked directly at Vryn. You call Kessa defective because her markings show her emotions clearly, he said, but maybe the defect is not being able to show what you really feel. Maybe hiding everything behind stable colors is what makes you limited, not Hertha. Dining hall was completely silent. Kisa felt her markings shift from dark distress to something brighter amber. With confusion, pale blue with dawning wonder. Vryn's face twisted with anger. You are primitives who understand nothing about genetic optimization, he said. We maintain our species' purity through careful selection. You accept everyone because you lack standards. Marcus shrugged. We tried your way once, he said quietly. We had programs where we decided who was worthy of living based on genetics. We sterilized people we deemed inferior. We killed millions because they did not fit someone's idea of perfect. We call that period the darkest time in human history, and we swore never to repeat it. Looked at Kesso, learned that different does not mean broken. We learned it the hardest way possible. Maybe you just have not. Learned it yet. Kessa stood up slowly. Her markings were glowing now with steady, brilliant golda. Color they had never shown before. Avreen stared at her in shock. That color indicated complete confidence and self, except in something no Velthary, with unstable. Markings should be able to achieve. I am not ashamed anymore, Kessa, said her voice clear and strong. You taught me to hate myself for being different. These humans taught me that the problem was never with me. The problem was with... Yoshi looked around at her human friends and the other outcasts who had found acceptance at this table. I choose this, she said. I choose people who see worth instead of defects. Choose kindness over genetic perfection. I choose them. Vreen opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out finally. He turned and walked away, followed by the other Veltharithi. Dining hall erupted in conversation. Sat down, feeling her markings pulse with gold and bright blue. Joy and relief mixed together. Sarah grinned at Hearth. That was amazing, she said. Dol Chen nodded approvingly. Marcus just smiled and went back to his terrible coffee, like nothing unusual had happened. Later that night Kessa walked back to her quarters. Sarah caught up with her. Hey, she said, I wanted to tell you something. There is a human colony ship being assembled in Dock 7. They are recruiting crew members from multiple species for a deep space mission. The pay is good, and they are looking for someone who can monitor systems using electromagnetic sensitivities. Paused. I think you should apply to us. Markings flickered with surprise. My, would they want? Masera looked at her seriously. Because you have proven you can adapt and overcome, he said, because you are exactly the kind of person who makes a colony successful, someone who knows what it is like to be rejected and chose to be kind. Any Wixa thought about a human colony mission? A chance to start completely fresh, a chance to prove that she could do more than just survive. She could thrive. A will apply, she said. Sarah's smile was bright enough to rival Kessa's. Markings good, she said, because honestly, we could use someone like you as. Kessa lay in her bunk that night. She thought about how much had changed. 3 weeks ago she had been alone and hopeless. Now she had friends, she had purpose, she had a future that looked brighter than anything she had imagined in. It all started because one human decided to sit beside her. The application terminal glowed in front of Kessa as she stared at the empty fields waiting to be filled. Marcus sat beside her in the station's public data center, offering quiet support. Do I even say? She asked. Her markings flickered pale yellow with nervousness. Tell them what you can do, Marcus said. Tell them what you have learned, not what other people said. You wear a Keza. Took a breath and started typing. She wrote about her electromagnetic sensitivity and how she had helped the engineering teams find problems that diagnostics missed. She wrote about learning to work with different species and adapting to new situations. She did not mention her genetics or her markings or the word defective. For the first time in her life, she described herself by what she could do instead of what she was told she left. The next week, Kessa prepared for the interview with help from her human friends. Sarah taught her how to project confidence, even when nervous. Jake showed her human interview techniques and what kinds of questions to expect. Told Chen shared stories about colony life and what skills really mattered when you were light years from established civilization. It is not about being perfect, Chen said one evening. Colonies need people who can solve problems creatively, people who stay calm when things go wrong, people who care about the group surviving more than personal glory. You have all of that. Kaisa's markings glowed soft blue with gratitude as word spread that Kessa was applying for the human colony mission. Something unexpected happened. Other outcasts started approaching her. Torvik asked how the application process worked. At least wanted to know if they accepted telepaths with weak abilities. Young Silurian, whose crystal structure was considered flawed, asked if physical differences mattered. To Humanskessa found herself becoming a bridge between the misfits of a dozen species and the human community. She realized that Marcus's simple gesture of sitting beside her had created ripples far beyond what either of them imagined. She was not The only one who needed to know that different did not mean worthless. The interview was scheduled for early morning in conference room. Theresa arrived 15 minutes early wearing her best clothing. Her markings cycled through nervous amber. But she focused on breathing steadily like Sarah had taught her. The door opened, and a human woman in a captain's uniform gestured her inside. Captain Alina Rodriguez, the woman said, extending her hand. Please. Sakessa shook her hand and sat trying to calm her racing heart. Two other humans sat at the table. One was an older man with gray at his temples, introduced as Chief Engineer Patterson. The other was a younger woman named Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the colony's planned medical officer. Captain Rodriguez looked at Kessa's application on her data pad. Your engineering recommendations are impressive, she said. Marcus Chen speaks very highly of your abilities, Chief. Patterson nodded. Kessa walked through the crowded dining hall of Meridian Hub with her head down and her shoulders hunched forward, trying to make herself as small as possible. Finding that relay problem saved us significant resources. Your sensitivity to electromagnetic fields is documented as genuine and highly useful. But Dr. Tanaka leaned forward. We need to understand something. According to your file, your own species rejected you due to genetic instability. How do we know you are reliable for a long-term mission where we cannot simply replace crew member? Skessa felt her markings flash orange with shame, but she forced herself to meet the doctor's eyes. My markings are unstable by Velthari standards, she said, but that same instability makes me more sensitive to electromagnetic fluctuations than others of my species. What my people call a defect has proven useful to your engineers, Captain. Rodriguez made a note. Tell me about a time you faced rejection and how you handled it. Kessa thought carefully through. Weeks ago, I could not find anyone willing to sit with me at meals, she said. I was alone and believed I deserved to be. Then Marcus sat beside me and other humans followed. They showed me that rejection teaches you what you do not want to become. It taught me to value connection because I know what it is like to live without it. Chief Patterson leaned back. What is your biggest weakness, Kessa? Did not hesitate. I doubt myself, she said. I spent my life being told I was inferior. Even now when I succeed, part of me wonders if it was luck, but I am learning to trust my abilities. Every day I am learning. Dr. Tanaka's expression softened slightly. Captain Rodriguez asked the question that would change everything. Why do you want to join a human colony mission? What makes you want to leave everything familiar? Kessa's markings cycled through several colors before settling on steady blue. Because humans taught me something my own species could not, she said. You taught me that worth is not determined by genetics, or appearance, or meeting someone else's standard of perfection. You taught me that struggling and surviving and learning to be kind despite pain are what makes someone valuably. I want to be part of a community that believes that. I want to prove that the broken ones, you call them, can build something beautiful. Captain Rodriguez sat back and exchanged looks with the other interviewers. The older woman's expression was unreadably. I was told I was too emotional to command, Rodriguez said finally, that I cared too much about crew well-being to make hard decisions. I was passed over for promotion 6 times. She smiled slightly then. I stopped trying to be what they wanted and started being who I was. Now I command this mission. She looked at Kessawat. Did being underestimated teach? Yokisa felt her markings shift through a rainbow of colors as emotions washed through her. Not weakness, but honesty. Instability, but depth. It taught me that the people who underestimate you give you freedom. She said they expect nothing, so you have nothing to lose. You can fail without shame because they already believe you will, but when you succeed, it means everything because you did it for yourself. Taught me that being invisible means you see everything you notice patterns others miss. You understand pain and isolation in ways that make you kinder. You learn to value the people who choose you because you know how rare that is. She paused and her markings settled into brilliant gold. Being underestimated taught me that other people's judgments say more about them than about me. The room was quiet for a moment. Chief Patterson was nodding slowly. Tanaka was making notes. Captain Rodriguez stood and extended her hand. Welcome to the colony mission, Kessa. We'll be happy to have you as our systems monitor specialists. As markings exploded into colors, She did not know she could produce bright golds and blues and greens swirling together in patterns of pure joy. "You are accepting me," she said barely. Able to speak, Rodriguez smiled. Just proved you have exactly what we need, someone who learned resilience the hard way, someone who understands that different perspectives create better solutions, someone who values being chosen because she knows what rejection feels like. She will protect this crew because she knows how precious community really is. That evening, Kessa's human friends threw a celebration at their usual table. Sarah brought something she claimed was champagne, but tasted like cleaning solution. Jake tried to make a cake and created something that looked like a science experiment. Chen gave Kessa a small data chip. It contained photos from 70 worlds he had visited, reminders that the galaxy was bigger and more beautiful than any single species' prejudices. Marcus simply smiled and raised his terrible coffee in a toast to new beginnings, he said. The whole group cheered as Kessa looked around at the faces of humans and outcasts who had become her family. She felt something she never thought possible. She felt like she belonged. Celebration was interrupted by station alarms blaring through the dining hall. Emergency lights flashed red. A mechanical voice announced cargo vessel Delta 9 experiencing catastrophic engine failure, trajectory intercept with station docking ring in 18 minutes. Sessa felt it before the announcement finished. The electromagnetic signature of a ship's engines dying, the desperate fluctuations of power systems failing one by one. She stood abruptly. "I can feel it," she said. "The ship is closer than 18 minutes. The main engine containment is collapsing. When it fails completely, the explosion will destabilize 3 other ships in the docking ring." Marcus was already moving. "How many ships?" Kessa closed her eyes and extended her senses. "For total," she said, "maybe 600 people." Captain Rodriguez appeared at their table, still in uniform from the interview. "Can you guide a repair team to the problem?" she asked Kessa. "Can you sense the ship well enough to direct repairs?" Ramela Case's markings flickered with fear. She had never tried anything like that. The electromagnetic noise of a dying ship would be overwhelming, like touching a live electrical current with her bare hands. "I do not know," she admitted. Rodriguez looked her in the eyes. "This is what colony life is like," she said. "Possible problems that need solving anyway will." Utrexa thought about all the people on those ships. She thought about how humans had given her a chance when everyone else had given up on her. She thought about proving that the broken ones could save lives. "Yes," she said. Her markings blazed gold with terrified determination. "We'll try." Marcus grabbed his emergency toolkit. "Then let us move," he said as they ran toward the docking ring access corridors. Kessa realized this was her first real test. Not an interview or a simple diagnostic. This was life and death. This was everything she had learned about her own worth put to the ultimate challenge, and she was running toward it beside humans who believed she could succeed. Her markings glowed steady and bright as she prepared to prove them right. The maintenance corridor was narrow and filled with the humming of the station's systems as Kessa ran beside Marcus and his emergency team. Sarah piloted a repair shuttle that would meet them at the external access point. Chen followed despite his age, because he had dealt with engine failures on frontier worlds and knew things that manuals did not teach. Chief Patterson coordinated from the command center, giving them constant updates. 15 minutes to impact, he said, through their communication devices. The cargo vessel's containment is at 30% and dropping wire evacuating the docking ring. But if that ship explodes, it will take out the ring structure and breach multiple sections. Hundreds will. Kessa felt the dying ship like a scream in her mind. Every failing system sent out electromagnetic pulses that her sensitive biology picked up. It was painful, like standing too close to a fire butt. She pushed forward. They reached the external maintenance airlock and suited up quickly. Marcus checked Kessa's suit seals twice. "You can do this," he said quietly. "Just tell us what you sense and we will translate it into repairs. Trust yourself." As a nodded, though her markings were flickering wildly inside her helmet. They cycled through the airlock and stepped out onto the station's outer hull. The cargo vessel was visible in the distance, growing larger as it drifted closer. Sarah's repair shuttle swept in beside them. "Get in," she called. "We have 12 minutes." The shuttle accelerated toward the dying ship. Kessa closed her eyes and extended her senses fully. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. It Felt like touching an exposed electrical wire. Her markings went dark briefly before flaring back to life in chaotic patterns. "Tell me what you feel," Marcus said, his voice steady, and Kessa forced herself to focus through the pain. "The main engine containment field," she gasped, "it is collapsing from the bottom up there. It's a fracture in the magnetic confinement array at coordinates." She rattled off technical positions. Marcus translated quickly. "Patterson, did you get that confirmed?" Chief Patterson responded, "That matches our remote scans, but we cannot access that section remotely. Someone needs to physically repair the array. That it's a 30-minute job," Patterson said. "We have 11 minutes, then we work faster," Marcus said. "What else?" Kessa pushed her senses deeper into the dying ship, ignoring the way it made her markings flash with pain. "The secondary power coupling," she said, "it is feeding back into the primary systems. You repair the containment without fixing the coupling, it will just fail again in minutes. You need to reroute power through." She paused, searching for the right words through the emergency bypass conduits. Chun's voice came through. "I know those conduits," he said. "They were common on older cargo vessels I can handle. The reroute if someone gets me to the power junction." Sarah adjusted their course on it. The shuttle docked with the cargo vessel using emergency clamps. The ship's crew had already evacuated. It was a ghost ship filled with failing systems and growing danger. 9 minutes, Patterson warned. Marcus, Sarah, and old Chen moved into the ship with practiced efficiency. Sixa stayed in the shuttle, maintaining her sensory link with the dying system. She became their eyes, guiding them through corridors, warning them when power conduits were about to fail, telling them which bulkheads were safe to cut through and which would vent atmosphere. The pain was getting worse. Maintaining the link felt like holding onto something that was burning her hands. Her markings began to flicker, erratically going dark for longer periods. "Left corridor," Kessa said, her voice strained. "The right path has a plasma leak the diagnostics have not detected yet." Marcus trusted her completely and went left. They reached the magnetic confinement array. It was a mess of damaged components and failing field generators. 7 minutes, Patterson said. Marcus started working with speed that came from years of emergency repairs. His hands moved efficiently, replacing burned-out sections and rerouting power. Old Chen reached the power junction and started his reroute. Sarah stood guard, monitoring for any new problems. Maintained her link, feeling every fluctuation in the ship's dying systems, but the effort was taking its toll. Her neural pathways were not meant to sustain this level of sensory input. Her markings went completely dark. She could taste copper. "Kessa, your biosigns are dropping," Dr. Tanaka's voice came through. "You need to disconnect." "Not yet," Kessa whispered. "Not until they are safe." 5 minutes, Patterson said. Marcus finished the last connection on the containment Ara Chion. "How is that reroute coming?" "Almost there," the old engineer said. "Give me 60 seconds." Kessa felt something shift in the ship's power grid. "Wait," she said urgently. "There is another problem, though. Cargo bay on deck 3 has unstable containers. When we restart the containment field, the power surge is going to destabilize them. They are carrying volatile materials. If they rupture, the explosion will breach the hull. Even if we fix the engines," Marcus finished. "Can you tell us which containers?" Kessa tried to focus, but her vision was blurring. Her markings stayed completely dark. "Bay 3, she said. "Containers marked." She struggled to process the electromagnetic signatures, read warning labels, chemical compound designations. Starting with she could not finish the sentence. Sexamachus said sharply, "You need to stop. You are hurting yourself. Your life matters more than this." Kessa heard the words, but she thought about all the times people had told her that her life did not matter, that she was defective, worthless. It's a mistake that should have been eliminated. "Now I am worth something," she whispered. "Let me prove it." She pushed her senses one more time. "Container 8, she said. "Container 15, Container 22, all marked with chemical designation. H7X, move them away from the power conduits before restart." 3 minutes, Patterson warned. Sarah sprinted toward the cargo bay. Marcus and Chen finished their repairs. Old Chen completed the power reroute. Sarah reached the containers and started moving them with the ship's internal loading system. 2 minutes, Kessa maintained her link even as her neural pathways began to overload. She felt like she was being pulled apart. System on the ship screamed in her mind, but she held on guiding warning protecting candors. Secured Sarah called Marcus, and Chen reached. The shuttle Chen activated the new power configuration. Containment fields stabilized, the engine shutdown became controlled instead of catastrophic one. Minute Patterson said, then 30 seconds, then the cargo vessel's engines went silent and safe. Ship's emergency thrusters fired, stopping its drift toward the station. Sarah piloted the shuttle away as station tugs moved in to secure the vessel. We did it. Marcus said, Kessa, you did it, but Kessa could not respond. The neural overload had finally overwhelmed her. Her markings went completely dark and stayed that way. She collapsed in her seat unconscious. The medical bay was quiet when Kessa woke. She tried to move, but her body felt heavy. Her markings were still dark, completely unresponsive. Panic flared in her chest. Dr. Tanaka appeared beside her bed edge. She said gently, you have been unconscious for 2 days. Your neural pathways went into protective shutdown. We were not sure if they would recover my markings, Kessa whispered. I cannot feel them. They are dark. Dr. Tanaka pulled up a scan. Your biology did something remarkable, she said. When faced with the overload, your neural pathways did not break. They reorganized or structured themselves to handle the input. You are different. Nucha felt tears building. Different. Defective, she said. Bitterly, some things never change. No, Dr. Tanaka said, firmly different, as in stronger. Watch. She dimmed the room lights slowly. Kessa's markings began to glow, but they were not the dim, flickering patterns from before. They were brilliant, vibrant. Colors cycled with a fluidity and clarity she had never experienced. They responded to her emotions, but with control she never thought possible. What Kessa breathed, your neural pathways adapted. Dr. Tanaka explained, you forced them to process more than they were designed for, and instead of breaking, they evolved. Your markings are now more responsive and stable than any Velthri I have ever scanned. The door opened and Marcus entered, followed by Sarah, Old Chen, and Jake. Behind them came Torvik Lises and dozens of other outcasts who had become her friends. They filled the medical bayou. Saved 643 people, Marcus said quietly. The entire station knows what Eudigus is. Markings glowed gold with emotion, but I nearly killed myself, she said. That was reckless. That was brave. Sarah corrected, that was what we needed. Captain Rodriguez entered last. She carried a formal data pad. Kessa, she said, the Velthri delegation has filed a complaint. They claim you are Velthri property under genetic salvage law. They say you were declared unviable and should have been recycled. They want to prevent you from boarding the colony. Shipkasi's markings flashed dark with fear. Everything she had worked for, everything she had proven, and they still wanted to take it away. But Rodriguez smiled slightly. The complaint has created an interesting diplomatic situation. She said several species support the Velthri, claim because they are nervous about humans disrupting established hierarchies about genetic worth, but many more species are refusing to support it because 643 people are alive today because of someone the Velthri call defective. Rodriguez looked at Kesseth. Colony shipped to parts in 3 days, she said. We need to resolve this before then, or you cannot come with. Yuskasa felt her markings cycle through every color. Fear and guard determination. She had come too far to give up. Noche had proven her worth to herself. Now she would prove it to everyone else. I will face them, she said. I will make them see. Marcus put his hand on her shoulder. You will not face them alone, he said. We are with you. Every person in that medical bay nodded. Humans and outcasts standing together. Kessa realized that she was not the scared alone person who could not find a seat anymore. She had found her people, and together they would face whatever came next. The station council chamber was filled with representatives from 30 different species, all gathered to hear the Velthri complaint against Kessish. Stood in the center of the room with Marcus and Captain Rodriguez beside her. Her markings were cycling through calm blues, trying to project confidence she did not entirely feel. Vreen stood at the opposing podium, wearing formal Velthri robes. His markings were perfectly stable, showing the genetic superiority his people prize. Council members, he began. We invoke salvage law statute 7. Kissa was declared genetically unviable by Velthri medical authorities 15 cycles ago. She should have been humanely recycled as per our species protocols. Her continued existence is a violation of Velthri Genetic management law is property of the Velthary state. It must be returned. Several species representatives nodded. The Kryn delegate spoke. Genetic management is a recognized sovereign right. Each species determines its own standards. The Meridian representative agreed. Allowing inferior genetics to propagate weakens the species. This is established biological fact. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward with respect. She said, Casa is not property. She is a person who has proven her value. She saved 643 lives, 2 days alive. That would have been lost if we followed your definition of inferior. Vereen did not even look at Kessa's actions of one individual. Do not negate genetic inferiority. He said a broken tool may work once, but it remains broken. Kessa should be grateful we are willing to reclaim her, rather than simply eliminating the problem. Marcus's hands clenched into fists, but Captain Rodriguez put a hand on his arm. Shaniza needs to do this herself, she whispered. The council chairman, a massive Thurian with 4 arms, called for order. Does the accused wish to speak? He asked. Kessa stepped forward. Her markings shifted to Goldius, she said. Her voice was quiet, but steady. I want to tell you what I learned. She looked around at all the different species. 15 cycles ago, my own people told me I was worthless. She said my markings did not work correctly. Was defective a burden, something that should be removed? I believed them. I spent my life hiding, apologizing for existing, waiting for someone to decide. I was too much trouble to tolerate. She paused, then a human sat beside me. He did not ask about my genetics. He did not check my markings. He just sat down and shared his terrible coffee and treated me like I was supposed to be there. Her markings brightened more. Humans came. They taught me that different does not mean broken. They showed me that the things my people called defects were actually abilities. Others did not have my unstable markings. It's made me more sensitive to electromagnetic fields. My isolation taught me to observe and notice patterns. My pain taught me to be kind, because I know what cruelty feels like. Vreen interrupted. This is sentiment, not logic. He said genetic inferiority is measurable, quantifiable. It does not matter what humans think. Hessa turned to face him directly. You are right, she said. Does not matter what humans think, it matters what I think. She walked closer to the Velthary. Delegation, you taught me to hate myself, she said, to see my reflection and think failure, to hear my own voice and think worthless. You taught me that my existence was a mistake. Her markings blazed brilliant gold. But humans taught me something more powerful. They taught me that worth is not assigned by genetics. It is proven by choices, by effort, by what you do when everything tells you to give up. She gestured to the council. 643 people are alive, because someone you called defective chose to risk everything to save them. I maintained a sensory link with a dying ship that nearly killed Memi. Neural pathways adapted and grew stronger instead of breaking. The Silurian representative who had earlier supported the Velthary looked troubled. That is medically documented, she said quietly. The scans show neural evolution beyond normal. Velthary Capaciticus continued. You want to reclaim me under salvage law, she said to Vren. You do not want me back because you value me. Want me back because I proved you wrong, because every day I exist and thrive I show that your system of genetic perfection is flawed, because if one defective Velthary can succeed, then maybe you are eliminating others who could have contributed. Maybe. Your entire philosophy is built on fear instead of science. Vreen's perfectly stable markings flickered. Slightly careful, Kessa, he said. You speak of things you do not understand more than you think. Kessa said, I understand that control is not the same as superiority. Understand that eliminating everyone who does not fit your standards makes you weaker, not stronger. I understand that you are afraid. The chamber fell silent. What could I possibly fear from you? Venus changed. Kessa said simply, you fear that if people see me succeed, they will question whether your way is the only way, whether perfection is really the goal or just the excuse. She turned back to the council. I am not asking you to change your species laws, she said. I am asking you to recognize that I have a choice. I was not recycled. I escaped. I survived. I found people who value me for what I can do instead of what I look like. She gestured to Captain Rodriguez and Marquesas. Humans are offering me a place on their colony mission, a chance to build something new. Chance to prove every single day that worth is earned, not assigned. I choose them. I choose to live, not because I reject being Velthary, but because I accept being myself. Thurian chairman considered this as unprecedented. He said salvage law has never been challenged in this manner, then perhaps it is time. For precedent, Captain Rodriguez said humanity does not recognize genetic salvage law. We find it morally reprehensible. Species that claims ownership of a sentient being based on genetics will find their relationship with humanity negotiably. Was a calculated threat. Humans were newcomers to galactic politics, but they controlled significant resources and trade routes. Several species shifted uncomfortably. The Kryn delegate, who had initially supported Vreen, spoke. Perhaps we should consider the specific circumstances. She said the individual in question has demonstrated significant value. Genetic standards should allow for exceptional cases. Other delegates murmured agreement. Rhine looked furious, but before he could respond, another Velthari stepped forward. It was a younger male from the delegation. His name tag read, Tauren Council members. He said, I wish to present evidence. Of Reen turned to him sharply. Tauren, what are you doing, Tauren? Pulled up data on the main display. I've been researching Velthari genetic records. He said over the past 300 cycles, we have eliminated 73,000 individuals for genetic instability. But I found historical records from before we began genetic management. In that era, Velthari, with unstable markings, often became our greatest innovators, who could express complex emotions, scientists, who could perceive patterns, others misleaders, who understood the full spectrum of experience. He showed graphs and historical documents. We eliminated diversity in the name of perfection, he said, and our innovation rate has dropped by 40%. Art has become repetitive. Our science has stagnated. We removed the very traits that made us adaptable. Rain's markings flashed orange with anger. This is heresy, he said. You have no authority to present. This Storin looked at. Kessish has proven what we lost, he said. Dan, I want to help reform our species, but I need proof that the defective ones can thrive. He turned to the council. Let her go, he said. Let her succeed. Let her show us what is possible when we stop eliminating those who are different. The chamber erupted in discussion. Species delegates argued back and forth. Finally, the Thurian chairman called for order. We will vote, he announced, all in favor of recognizing Kessa's right to choose her own path. 3 species voted in favor, 4 voted against, including the Veltharithari, abstained them. Motion passes. The chairman said Kessa is free to join the human colony mission. Vreen looked like he wanted to protest, but Tauren put a hand on his arm. This is bigger than one individual, he said quietly. This is about our species' survival. Let her prove what we lost. Maybe then we can change. As markings exploded into colors she had never shown before, brilliant golds and blues and greens swirling together, she turned to Marcus and Captain Rodriguez. I can really go, she whispered. Rodriguez smiled. Welcome officially to the crew. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Kessa packed her few belongings. She said goodbye to the outcasts who had become her friends. Storvik was applying to join a different colony mission. Lease had found work with a human research team. Mothers were staying on the station, but they all had something now they did not have before. Hope on departure day. Kessa stood in the docking bay with her small bag. The colony ship loomed through the windows, massive and beautiful. A promise of new beginnings. Marcus walked up beside her. Ready, he asked. Kessa looked at him. Human who had changed everything by simply sitting beside her. Thank you, she said. For what? Marcus asked. For showing me that kindness is not weakness. She said that acceptance is not charity, that worth is not determined by genetics but by choice. Marcus smiled. You showed yourself that, he said. I just gave you the space to see it, Captain. Rodriguez called for board and Kessa walked toward the ship surrounded by humans and other species who had all been told they were not good enough together. They were building something new. As the ship prepared to launch, Kessa stood at an observation window. Sarah joined her. You know what is amazing? Sarah said. What? Kessa asked. That all of this started because my idiot brother could not find a table and sat with the first person he saw, laughed, her markings glowing warm gold. That is not how he tells the story. Sarah grinned. Well, he is a romantic, but seriously, she said, you changed things here. People what? Watched what happened. Species are questioning their genetic laws. Outcasts are finding each other. You started something bigger than just yourself. The ship launch stars streaked past the window. Skessa placed her hand on the viewport, watching. Meridian Hub grows smaller on the station. She knew that young aliens, who had been told they were worthless, were looking up at the departing ship and wondering if maybe they could be more than what others said wondering. If somewhere there were people who would sit beside them, wondering if different could. Actually mean beautiful Marcus came to stand beside her. His reflection appeared in the window next to her. Skessa looked at him. I used to think my life was a mistake, she said. Quietly, I used to think I should not exist now. I know that I was always supposed to be here. I just had to find the right people to see it. Marcus did not say anything. He just stood there, present, portive. Exactly what she needed. Kesa looked out at the infinite stars ahead. She thought about the colony they would build, about the life she would create, about the person she was becoming. She thought about how one simple gesture had changed everything, how sitting beside someone who was alone had created ripples across an entire station, how kindness had proven more powerful than genetic perfection. Her markings glowed steady and bright, no longer a sign of defect, but of depth, no longer unstable, but beautifully complex in a galaxy that measured worth by perfection. Humanity had offered something more powerful, the radical belief that everyone deserves a chance to prove what they can become. Kessa had proven it, not because she was fixed, not because she became what others wanted, but because she learned to value what she already was. The ship jumped too faster than light travel behind. The Meridian Hub disappeared ahead, lay unknown worlds and infinite possibilities. Ska smiled, her markings blazing gold with joy. She was finally going home, not to a place, but to people who saw her worth, and that made all the difference.